All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and Utah is headed to Logan this week for the Battle of the Brothers, Utah versus the Utah State Aggies. Should be a great matchup, a real fun one, and a real test with so many variables going on this week. Definitely a ton of questions we need to get answers. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a great time, guys. We're going to talk about, what's the quarterback situation? Is it Cam? Is it Isaac? What is going on there? We're also going to dive in. We're going to give some shout outs to guys. We are 2 games in at this point, so we do have some decent track records. Who's really been showing out to start the year? Who could we maybe expect some more of? Maybe even a few position group shout outs that we could give. And then we're going to dive into the actual matchup against Utah State. Where does Utah have the advantages? What will we look to avoid? What will we look to do, actively capitalize on? It's going to be a great time, guys. I'll give a prediction at the end. Before we get into it, guys, smash the like button. That'll help get the video out to more Utah fans. And then I want you guys to do a special thing with the comment this week. Give a prediction now. Write a comment right now below the video what you think the final score would be. And then in a minute here in this video, we're going to give you a ton of analytics, a ton of data that should maybe give you a better idea of how the game might go other than what you initially thought. And I'd love to see if that changes what your prediction is on the game. So that'd be a fun little exercise. So maybe give a prediction now and then give a prediction at the end of the video once we go over everything. I think that'll be fun. And then if you haven't already, guys, subscribe to the channel. We put out a ton of Utah Utes football content. If you're into that, make sure you hang around the channel. I love doing it and I love interacting with you guys. Outside of that, let's dive in. Let's get started and go Utes. One last thing before we get started. This podcast is sponsored or in affiliation with the 1012 Network, and we're sponsored by Charlie Hustle. Check out the shirt. Charlie Hustle, really nice products. They have a 15% off offer for any fans of this channel or of the 1012 Network. Just go to charliehustle.com and type in 101215. Again, that's charliehustle.com. Type in 101215. Great vintage, very good products, guys. I wouldn't accentuate it so much if I didn't feel that way. It's honestly, they send me their shirts and I love them. They're very casual too, like low key, but very nice, right? It really feels like a shirt you buy in the 70s, but very high quality. So very, very cool. But let's go ahead and dive in and start the show. All right, guys. And now we're going to be talking about some shout outs to some of the players that have really impressed early in the year. I'm going to start with defense. Now, if they're not on this list, that doesn't mean they haven't been impressive. I just think there is a little group of players that have been especially impressive, and that's who we're going to talk about today. So, the first guy on defense that has really shown out this year is Teo Johnson. Now, Teo Johnson, not a great game against Southern Utah, but when it really mattered, when plays needed to be made against Baylor, he showed up and he showed out. Just to give you an idea what we're talking about here, he is tied for second on the team in total tackles in the season. And this is a free safety, guys. So that means he's getting down in the box, getting dirty, and making plays. But more than that, what's crazy impressive to me is PFF has a stat. Now, he's grading out well, according to PFF, right? He's grading out very well, a 73 overall grade. That's a very good grade. But there's a stat called stops, and you're going to hear me mention that with a lot of these players. I think that's one of the most important stats. And a stop is basically a play that is neutral or negative for the offense. So it's like a tackle at the line or a tackle for a loss, right? And Teo Johnson has 4 stops in 2 games. A free safety has 4 stops. That's really impressive. He's also grading out really well overall. And I think if you didn't notice how big of an impact he made in the Baylor game, I don't think you were paying attention. Teo Johnson looked like an animal. And I think even though he didn't grade out well against Southern Utah, he missed a few tackles while going for big hits. And I think we're in for another, following up an awesome season. Just if you guys aren't aware, Teo Johnson, is his first time being a safety, finished with a 65.6 grade last year. So solid grade in a really tough Pac-12 conference. And I'm expecting him to follow it up this year with a really impressive season. Now, next guy we're going to talk about is going to be Connor O'Toole. Connor O'Toole not grading out crazy well this year, according to PFF, a 63.1 overall grade. But here's some stats that will impress you, right? He's tied for the most tackles on the team, and then he's got 2.5 sacks on the year already for a total of 31 yards. So those are impactful sacks, right? Those are big losses on 2.5 sacks. And again, I'm going to throw out this stat, guys. Stops. It is such an important number. He has 4 stops in the season as well, 2 in each game. Again, that's a neutral or negative play for the offense. And those can be drive enders, game changer type of plays, or, at least drive ending type of plays. He is really showing out. The eye test is telling me that he's grading out way better than a 63.1. But the stops follow that up, and he looks awesome. I'm super excited for Connor O'Toole this year and just seeing just how high that ceiling can get. Now, I'm going to follow up with another edge rusher, right? Beast, Van Fillinger. Van Fillinger is having a heck of a year, guys. Really impressive year. Grading out at a 71.9. That's a very good grade. Stops, he has 3 stops according to PFF. But the number that really jumps out on the page, obviously the PFF grade is very impressive, but the number that really jumps out on the page here for me is 3 sacks for Van Fillinger already on the year, guys. 2 games in, 3 sacks. That's a good trend. I mean, I can't tell you how often I talk about when is Van Fillinger going to live up to that hype and really make it happen. And it's feeling like we might be watching the Van Fillinger big, NFL level season here. So hopefully that happens. I have a really good feeling that one of Connor O'Toole or Van Fillinger is going to have a really big year. So should be a great time there. Final shout out I want to give here is going to be Nate Ritchie. Nate Ritchie is someone no one is talking about, guys. It's not a perfect season for him so far, but he is tied for the most tackles on the team with 10 tackles, and 5 of those are solo tackles. Seriously, I'm very impressed with Nate Ritchie so far this year. Not grading out crazy well with PFF, not bad either, a 64.7. That's an average grade, but similar to Teo Johnson, he has 4 stops on the season. Again, that's a neutral or negative play for the offense. But what's more impressive is all 4 of the stops were in the Baylor game, guys. So when it mattered, he showed up and he showed up big. And it was, if my memory serves correctly, which I feel very confident saying this, these stops that I recall from Nate Ritchie, I shouted him out actually after the game if you watched the video last week. And these stops were in critical moments. It was when Cam went out and Baylor started to move the ball a little bit for a while, and we needed guys to step up, and Nate Ritchie was one of them. So I think those are guys that have really impressed me. Really, really good start to the season by those defenders. Really impressed, and I'm excited to see just how high their ceilings can be this year. So really excited to see those guys. Okay, guys, and now we're going to talk about the offensive players that deserve shout-outs. So the first guy I'm going to talk about is Mekhi Bernard. The guy's averaging over 6.5 yards a carry right now on 151 yards, and he showed up big in big moments. Seriously, he's one of the best running backs in the Big 12 for my money right now, and I'm excited to see this ball keep rolling. We've all known Mekhi Bernard's good. I think the question is just how good can you be? Can you take that next step and go from good to great to elite, right? And I think he has that type of potential. I'm just excited to see how he keeps that ball rolling. There's other guys that had good games against SUU that didn't really have great games against Baylor. So kind of is what it is there. I think as an offensive weapon right now, the only guy I really feel justified giving a lot of praise to as a weapon is Mekhi Bernard. And I think he's had a heck of a start to the year and is a big reason why we were able to finish off that win against Baylor. All right, now I want to shout out a group that I have been super critical of at times, and I couldn't be happier to see what they're doing to start this year. It's going to be the offensive line, guys. It's the group that really deserves a big shout out so far this year. Tanoa Togiai leads the group. Tanoa Togiai is offensive guard for Utah, and he is at an 81.9 PFF grade. So really impressive PFF grade. Just to give you guys some context, that's not just a really good grade. That's like he's grading out as like a top 5 offensive guard in college football right now. That's a special start to the year. Most of this offensive line group, as we go through the grades, had really good games against Baylor. So just be aware of that. So all their grades shot up. But that's awesome because, I mean, that front seven did have some hype going into this game. So next, I'm going to talk to you guys about Spencer Fano. He's taking that second-year leap in stride, a 77.F grade, or 77.5 grade, sorry. Really good start to the year, 83.1 grade against Baylor, but 77.5 on the season. And that sophomore jump is looking awesome for him. Caleb Lomu as well, another tackle, really good start to the year, 73.7 grade, 76.7 against Baylor. Jaron Kump, a 71.3 grade, 78.4 against Baylor. Michael Mokofisi, kind of the lower end of the group, but still a decent start to the year, 63.3 grade, which is kind of like, slightly below average, but still, if that's your weakest link right now, it's a really good sign. Seriously, guys, this is like Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano are grading out as some of the best tackles in the Big 12 and towards the top of college football. And then Jaron Kump looking great at center as well, one of the best centers in the Big 12. And Michael Mokofisi, hopefully he gets a little better, but his pass blocking grade in both games has been excellent. And I think that's still a really good sign, right? It's not, the grades aren't where you want them to be, but the fact that his pass blocking is doing so well, and, Cam Rising is going to be such a big part of this season, is still a very good sign for the future. But so only one weapon I'm shouting out, and Mekhi Bernard on the offense, but that offensive line is looking fantastic. Okay, one cool thing about this episode coming out a little later in the week is we do have a little more finality on the quarterback situation. It does seem to be that Isaac Wilson will be the starter against Utah State. Now, you know how Utah does it. They play the cards close to the vest, right? They definitely do. Whittingham is not trying to give you a bunch of information before the game. But going into the game, the word from Witt is Isaac is 1, Brandon Rose is 2, right? That seems to be what's going on here. And I'm just going to give some thoughts on that. So, one, if we do see Cam, obviously it's a whole different story, right? All the predictions, all the guesswork, and everything I'm going to say from here on is kind of for naught. But with Isaac, I think I'm just going to give some thoughts on this before we really start breaking down the game. I think last week, right, he was kind of thrown in. I don't think he expected to go in. I'm sure he's getting a decent amount of reps of practice, but not a ton. They're going to have a game plan really centered around Isaac's strengths and weaknesses in this game, which we'll see a better performance out of Isaac than what we saw last week. I feel confident about that. But overall, I think it does limit what this offense can do, right? Cam's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Isaac is a true freshman. And I think we're going to be leaning on the run game. I think it puts us where we're less willing to take risk and then less willing to call plays where we take shots and try to make big things happen. So Isaac and I think Rose, I mean, when you look at that, Isaac at 1, Rose at 2. Rose also has flashed. And so worst case, if he did need to come in, break glass in case of emergency, um, not the worst thing in the world. So that's kind of where we are right now. Is it seems that Isaac Wilson will be the starter in this game, and I'm excited to see what he does when he has a full week of preparation. I do think that makes this a much more competitive game where I would still favor us to win and think we have a significantly better overall team. But if Isaac Wilson's the guy when we go to Logan, it definitely limits overall what we can do and makes this a much more interesting game overall. So that's that. Let's go ahead and dive in. We'll break down the matchup now. All right, guys. And so we are going to start down by just breaking down the stats for each team. We're going to start just by taking a look at Utah. So you can tell for Utah, the offensive numbers look a little lackluster, right? That's not exactly what you want to see. The defense looks pretty fantastic, right? Opponent points per game, opponent yards per game. We're number 21 in opponent points per game. Opponent yards per game, we're number 223. And just so you guys know, this is only counting FBS play. So as we break down these stats for team rankings, are an awesome website. You guys should check them out for your data and your stats. But as we break down, and this isn't sponsored by them or anything, I just love the website. It's my number one I use. As we break it down, it's only going to show what Utah State did against USC, and it's only going to show what Utah did against Baylor. So, be aware on the scale rating, Utah played a team that's like a 5, right? And then Utah State played a team that's like an 8.59 in USC at the Coliseum, right? So let's make sure we factor all of that in as we look at this. But you take a look here, Utah opponent yards per rush, 2.7, opponent rush yards per game, 108. I mean, we got some great numbers here going in our favor. Opponent passing yards per game, it's 115. I mean, our numbers look fantastic. Again, this is kind of what we did against Baylor. So, take it with a grain of salt. I'll zoom out real quick so you guys can see the overall numbers and just get a look at that. If you want to take a quick glance before we move on to Utah State, that's what we're looking at there. And let's move to Utah State. Okay, guys, now we've got the Aggies here. Let's zoom in a bit. So points per game, they scored 0 points against USC at the Coliseum. So they have 0 points showing, tied for worst in the country. Their defense, every number looks pretty disgustingly bad. Again, they were playing USC at the Coliseum, right? It's tough. USC looks good this year. Early in the year, guys, these breakdowns, when you're trying to be super analytical, it's tough, right? It really is. It's tough to get a great grasp on what this team is. I think Utah State looked not great, right? And I think the PFF grades for some of their guys look not great as well. Let's talk about some areas where I think Utah can really capitalize. So taking a look at the Utah State defense, opponent yards per rush was 7.2. Now for Utah, our offense yards per rush is, sorry, I got my ring light here. We're at 4.6, so a little under where we want to be, but you got to imagine if USC is doing 7.2, and I think USC's high-powered passing attack is going to be a big factor in all of this, right? Where USC is going to spread the field and make you respect their passing attack. So it's going to be easier for them to run on you. But if USC is doing 7.2 yards a carry on you, Utah is going to come punch you in the mouth, dude. That number right there, of course, it's not a complete equivalent, right? Because we played a lesser opponent than they did. But let's imagine you drop that down 1 yard per carry, which is a significant drop. And for both, that would put us still, like if you brought our average down 1 yard and you brought their average down 1 yard, we'd still be in the 5 yards per carry range when we play them. That's a really good sign for Utah. Now, they are going to crowd the box. I can't imagine they're not going to test Isaac. But just looking at these numbers, that's where I see a really big opportunity. Now, again, if you look at Utah State, you can go down to their passing defense, and the numbers are going to look horrendous, right? They allowed 295 passing yards in the game. Both numbers look just terrible. Rushing actually even looks worse, 253 rushing yards. Let me get a little coffee here. And guys like that, I use the red and white cup because it's Utes, baby. Go Utes. But passing yards, they got torn up by USC, but it does seem that USC is going to do that to a lot of teams this year. They look very, very good. So taking a look at this, the reason I'm showing you guys these stats is overall Utah looks significantly better than Utah State, even with, the rough start we've had because of Cam's injury. Like these numbers could look incredibly more separated than they already do. But with Cam's injury, they look a little closer, but because of quality of opponent, there's a big difference. Now, Utah's a better team than Utah State. That's the truth. And we recruit better, we develop better. But that I just want everyone to understand the quality of opponent we've both been playing when you look at these numbers. And so I'm going to end this session. And then we're going to go ahead and dive in, look at some PFF grades, some good matchups, and kind of what I think is going to happen. Okay, guys, the official breaking out of the PFF grades and actually putting them on the screen for the year. I'm sure a lot of you football nerds out there like that, like myself. I'm a football nerd as well, so it's not an insult. So this is the position group where I think Utah's the area of the field where I think Utah is going to have a significant advantage, right? It's going to be on our offensive line versus their defensive line. So these are their edge rushers, right? So this top guy has the most snaps with 75. That's 54.3. Then the next guy is more of a rotation guy probably with 48. And then Inoka Migao he's got a 48.4 grade on 67 snaps. So he has almost as many snaps as the top guy. So that's their edge rusher group. So those are the guys that are going to be playing the defensive end type position. They'll be going against our tackles. And then interior defense, let's take a look at this. For Utah or for Utah State, let's pull them up. Mountain West Conference, boom, Utah State. Okay, so they've got one good guy on the whole defensive front, and he's a 71 or a 72.6. He's playing 67 snaps, so a high number of snaps. He's not their number one snap guy, but a high number of snaps. And he's a great run defender. Now, Mako Williams, kind of a below average grade, not a bad grade, 61.4. But again, he's not even one of their top two snaps. He's going to be in there a good amount if he's got 61 snaps in the season. But 61.4 grade. And their top guy with 87 snaps is a 54.5 in Gabriel Iniguez. Now I want to show you guys that the group that their D line is going to go up against. We've already shown the grades in this video, but I'm going to show them one more time. Now, as I pull up our offensive tackles, I want you guys to remember that none of their guys are graded over a 60 at edge rusher. And look at where our guys are grading: a 77.5 for Spencer Fano and a 73.7 for Caleb Lomu. Now, look at these run block grades. Spencer Fano, a 91.3. Caleb Lomu, a 73.5. A 91.3 for Spencer. That's like best in the nation type of grade. That's good stuff right there, guys. And they're going to go against edge rushers that have not been able to do it against. I don't know. I mean, I feel confident saying that the tackles for USC aren't that much better, or like I don't think they're better than our tackles, right? Or if they are any higher quality, it's not a significant difference. Like these guys were 4-star prospects, and they're being trained in one of the best offensive line rooms in the country in Utah. So like if anything, our guys could be better than the tackles they went up against with USC. And don't forget, these grades are including the Robert Morris game for Utah State, and this team rankings only includes the FBS games, but this includes all games. So they're grading under a 60. You count for Utah State, you count the difference between Robert Morris and USC. That's like your season so far is average. So you're starting to get a real sample size of what these guys look like. Now, I do think for Spencer Fano, that pass block grade of a 47.3 is very low. That's a little concerning. But if Isaac Wilson is going to be the guy heading into this game, I mean, are you that worried about the pass blocking? I think we're going to run a lot. And now let's go ahead and move on to our offensive linemen, or our guards, our interior offensive linemen. So again, remember, they had one good defensive interior player, and then they had one not so good defensive interior player. Their defensive interior was better than their edge rushers, obviously. But you take a look here, guys. Like I mentioned before, Tanoa Togiai is grading out as the number 9 offensive guard in college football. He looks awesome. Run blocking grade through the roof. Michael Mokafisi, he's grading out slightly below average to average, but pass block grade is really high. Run block grade is below average, but still, those are two good guards. And Michael Mokafisi is still better than their second interior D lineman. And Tanoa Togiai, those grades are significantly better than their interior D lineman. I think this offensive line matchup, guys, and then we add in Jaron Kump. I mean, check this out, dude. Jaron Kump. Boom. Sorry. I didn't mean to go Utah State. Sorry about that. All right. So we're not in the Pac-12, dude. I'm all over the place. Big 12. All right. Boom. All right, Jaron Kump, 71.3 grade, 75.9 run block, 62.5 pass block. Overall, I mean, as you look at this matchup, guys, our O-line against their D-line, it really looks to me like we are going to beat the crap out of them in the trenches when we're on offense. And that, I mean, that's what the story says, right? And they're already struggling. Um, it looks awesome, right? It looks awesome. And with Isaac Wilson being the guy, and we're going to probably be running the ball in some or doing screen type of plays, right? Probably 65, 70% of the time. Let's be honest with that. This is going to look like if Isaac's in there. And this matchup really, really bodes well for that. So that's our O line against their D line. Okay, guys, and now let's take a look at their passing attack against our pass defense, and it starts with the wide receivers. Now, Utah State is known for having pretty good wide receivers. You can see here, Kyrese White is a 70.3 grade, and Jalen Royals is a 67.0 grade, and those are above average to good grades. And don't forget, they did play USC to get these grades. They look like a good group. Seriously, that looks like a good duo of wide receivers. It really does. And on the season, their actual stats, I'm not going to put them on the screen, but I'll read them to you guys. Kyrese White has 5 receptions for 146 yards, where Jalen Royals has 11 receptions for 124 yards. Jalen Royals, 6', 205. So he's kind of that guy to catch him short and try to break something away, where Kyrese White is more of that guy that can, get the big pass, 5'10", 185, kind of, breaks something big away, a faster type of guy. And they look like a good receiver group. Now, what ails them is the quarterback situation right now. Now, at quarterback, it seems like they are plagued with injuries. I was listening to a press conference from their head coach the other day, and it is just rough. And if you guys don't remember, there's a familiar name on the screen here, Bryson Barnes, the guy that single-handedly intercepted away the Northwestern Las Vegas Bowl. Just kidding. Kind of true, but he's a Utah guy and definitely had some big moments for Utah. Won us some games at times. That USC game last year was awesome. So definitely a guy that we are super familiar with. Now, you can see he's taking the vast majority of the snaps. I would expect him to be the guy. But look at that pass grade of 45.6, overall a 51 grade. It's not a good look. Seriously, it's not a good look. It's not what you want to see from your quarterback, right? And I think when you're seeing that, even though the receivers are grading out well, you got to have some confidence in our team, and I'm going to show you guys why. So let's go ahead and move over to our cornerbacks. So our cornerback room is actually playing quite well. If you take a look here, let's see. So boom, Utah. So take a look. I think the most surprising thing, Zamiah Vaughn is playing a little below average, but don't forget, he's always matched up with their top receiver for the other team. But the other really exciting thing, guys, is Elijah Davis and Smith Snowden, a 69.4 and a 69 PFF grade. Those are like good grades. Those are very good grades. Or not very good, but good grades. And some of that's against good opponents, right? I'm excited to see how good Elijah Davis is doing early this year. He really is stepping up and making plays. So you look at that, that's a really good sign. Yes, they have good receivers, but we've got a very good cornerback room and 3 good to great corners that we can kind of rotate in and out. And I don't think I don't think I'm that worried about the receivers, right? Like if the matchup feels off early in the game, switch things up a little. We've got 3 good guys, and Zamiah Vaughn that's not reflective of who he is. Once the season gets going, he had a slow start last year as well. Once the season gets going, his grade will average out to a higher grade. I feel confident saying that. He's a very good player, and I think we'll see this could be a very big game for him where he steps up and shows out. But that's the corners against the receivers. And then we move over to our safeties. These guys have been showing out. We shouted them out earlier in the video, right? Some of these grades were kind of repeating, but I like to look at the matchup eye to eye. So take a look here. I'm actually going to turn off the snap minimum because I want you guys to see all of them. So Alaki Gilman, I think he might be out for the first half of this game. Not positive on that one. Actually, might as well turn the snap minimum on because Teo Johnson grading out super well, good in coverage, extremely good in run defense, like elite run defense almost. Nate Ritchie, solid grades across the board. I think we're starting to slowly figure out that these are our two guys, and I think that's who a lot of us thought would be the two guys. I just didn't think Nate Ritchie be doing as well as he is. Just being honest, it felt like last year he was slipping up, and early in this year we'll see how it goes from here on out. But he is stepping up. So you look at that, guys. The struggles they're having at quarterback with Bryson Barnes on Utah State, and then our good to very good cornerback play against their good wide receivers. They're good wide receivers. Don't get me wrong, but I have more faith in our corner safety duo than I do in their quarterback wide receiver combo. Right, so as long as we step up to the plate and this defense does what they're capable of, we have a really good matchup there. Guys, and now we're going to be taking a look at their offensive line versus our defensive line, and we're going to start with their tackles. So right out the gate, number 54, Teague Anderson is a 71.3 grade, and don't forget that's with the USC game in there. 80.2 pass block, decent to slightly below average run block with a 63.7. He looks like a very good tackle. That is actually like a good to very good player. So I think he's pretty intimidating and a guy that'll probably hold his own pretty well against this Utah front seven. Now, where the story changes a little bit is this next guy. And just so you guys know, they both played exactly 123 snaps. These are their down out, down in offensive tackles. These are going to be the guys. Cole Motes, number 56, a 48.9 PFF grade. He's a good pass blocker, a 70.1, but 54.7 run blocking, pretty rough there. And just so you guys know, a 48.9 grade, if a Utah player on the offensive line was a 48.9 grade, I'd be calling him out. Like that's where I'd be, especially 2 games in and you're at a 48.9. That's what I like to call a liability. And I think I'm sure the coaches are aware of this guy, right? It's going to be, hey, whoever has this matchup, go ruin his day, go eat his lunch, throw him out of your way and go make a play, right? That's what you see when you see a guy like this. Now, obviously, no ill will towards him, but whoever's going up against him is probably going to be the guy. Keep an eye on that when number 56 is out there. Whoever's going up against him to see who's going to be making the play. See if that's what actually transpires on the field. All right, and now we've got their guards. So again, these are the 2 starting guards. A 61.2 and a 59.9. So those are below average. They're not terrible grades, but they're below average. This guy just dreadful pass blocking, number 62. And then the other guy, this guy looks decent. But I'm going to imagine we're going to get back there and make some havoc in the pass rush with whoever's this guy's blocking. Jeez, 28.7. That's so bad. All right, and then their center. Boom. Let's take a look here. All right. Okay. So this guy's a solid, right? Slightly below average, 63.5, but very good pass blocker as a solid offensive lineman. Not going to be like a Huckleberry or anything that we're just going to destroy. So let's take a look at our interior defense, right? They had a pretty decent, just like very dependable interior offensive line. So let's take a look at our guys. So Samodi Peppa, 55 snaps in the season. Actually, we're going to turn on the ignore snap count for this one because there's going to be guys rotating in. So Keanu Tanuvasa, Samodi Peppa, and then we're going to have Dallas Vakalahi. We're going to have Junior Tafuna. You look at this matchup, I mean, Junior Tafuna is the only one grading out in the same ballpark as those guys. And then we got Keanu Tanuvasa, Dallas Vakalahi, Samodi Peppa, who are grading out really high with a pretty decent sample size of snaps. Those guys are going to eat some lunch. Those guys are they're gonna dominate. Again, it's not a bad Utah State group, but you got to favor how our defensive interior looks. And honestly, as we break down these grades, guys, I think this defensive interior is a group standing out to me as very impressive, right? Where historically, our defensive interior has had a lot of ups and downs. And with all the talent in there this year, I'm excited to kind of see where they're trending. So let's go ahead and take a look at our edge rushers. Our edge rushers will be going up against those tackles. Let's take a look at that. Boom. Okay, Van Fillinger killing it on the year, 71.9. Logan Fano really struggling with a 56.2. I absolutely expect that as the year gets going, that will look different, right? But yeah, those are the three guys really getting snaps. Paul Fitzgerald, who is the guy that transferred from Utah State, I wonder if he'll get in at all. He's graded out decent in the snaps he's gotten. But Connor O'Toole grading out maybe slightly below average, but I don't think that completely uh, represents how he's playing on the field, because he had, especially against Baylor, he killed it. And then Logan Fano, again, struggling a bit, but looks, I expect him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him step it up. So whoever's going against that offensive tackle, the 48.9, I believe he was number 56, is going to have to step up and make plays, because the other guy is really good. But pass rush grade wise, Van Fillinger could still get him. Van Fillinger's looking great. I think this will be a game to watch, Van, especially if he's going up against number 54, guys. Make a mental note of that. If he's going up against their good offensive tackle, let's double check these numbers just to make sure I'm saying the right numbers of like what their tackles, the jersey number is what I'm talking about. Number 54 is the good one. And I'm excited. And if they're against 56, see if they're just eating these guys lunch. And then if they're against 54, especially Fillinger, I think it's his first really good test of the year. We'll get to see, like, hey, Fillinger, if he goes against this guy, like, is this going to be the year we expect from you? Now, I'm not sure exactly where everyone's going to be lining up, but I'm excited. Hopefully, if Van Fillinger's against 54 all day, that guy's going to have a bad day. And the expectation is for Van to come out and just kick some butt. So that's our defensive line against their offensive line. Another area where I think we have a good to very good advantage in the trenches. Hey guys, and now we are going to take a look at our passing game versus their pass defense. So, taking a look here, Dadrian Zipper grading out really well, but those snaps are almost all from the SUU game. Money Parks grading out, right in the average range, and he's got a lot of snaps on the year. Dorian Singer struggling a little. I'm guessing that drop on the throw from Cam is factored in there. Luca Caldarella getting a good amount of snaps, but again, most of those are the SUU game. So overall, this group, not super impressive, not bad either. We know the numbers aren't super impressive. Money Parks had a very good game last week. I think 80-something yards. So the other good thing about just following up on Money Parks is his game is kind of all about, like, really, you look at where he makes his money. No pun intended. That was not planned. Is a short route that he breaks away, right? Or just getting open on a short route and making a play there. So I think that's really good for this game, where that's what Isaac Wilson's going to want, is a guy that doesn't make him force it down the field, a guy that just gets open short and makes a play. Where I'd love to see Isaac hook up well with Dorian Singer, because it's weird. In the spring game, it felt like that's what Dorian Singer was doing, but it hasn't worked a lot in the season. So I'm excited to see how that goes. Let's move on to our tight ends. Tight ends, obviously a great group for Utah, and a group where we're seeing a lot of different guys and kind of lackluster in game one of outside of FCS, right? So let's turn off the snap minimum. So Carson Ryan grading out very poorly, only 26 snaps though. As a group, there's some below average grades. Brant Keithy looks very above average to good. But tight ends are actually, just so you guys know, tight ends are graded pretty harshly. It is a group you do not see high grade from. Like even Brant Keithy in his good years would be in the high 60s. So just to give you guys an idea, if you're seeing a 69 here for most positions, that would be like, for me, at least from what I've noticed, that'd be like a 75 for most positions. So if you're seeing guys like this, Bentley at a 59, it's really more like a 64, right? So it's solid play, not great, but solid. So good, right? It's a good receiving room of tight ends. I still have a lot of faith that they're going to be big playmakers. And then we move over to our quarterback situation, right? So at quarterback, let's take a look. Now, I want you guys to be aware it's not going to look great. Cam's numbers, his grades are actually low, and just being honest, this is probably one of the positions where I disagree with grades often. It's very common that I disagree with how they grade quarterback. It'll look like Cam every year. I don't think he's graded higher than a 75. And they'll have a decent chunk of guys in the 90s, and I'm just like, hey, well, there's no way those guys are 16 PFF points better than Cam. So just to give you guys some perspective here. But Isaac Wilson, the grade is bad, a 41, and I would say it's fair to say that the on-field performance has matched that grade, right? I think that's fair. Uh, with that, though, I think this week with the game plan and everything, we'll see a big jump in his grade and his performance. But how much, right? A 50 is basically what Bryson Barnes has been doing this year, which is not good. Hopefully, we're not putting the game on his back and making him carry the team. Obviously, that will not be the game plan. That would be disgustingly bad. And Ludwig does the opposite of that. As much criticism as I have for the guy, he he does the opposite, where it's like, if he has any concern that you are not going to be a good quarterback, he's going to do everything he can to put the game in other people's hands. So now let's check it out, because Utah State has one of the better DB rooms, in the West Coast, not just in G5. So taking a look at that group, and again, guys, when we look at these rooms, this is against good talent, right? So they've got an average corner here in number 65, Avante Dickerson, number 17, or he's a PFF grade of 65. And then DJ Graham, a 71.3 on 89 snaps. So it looks like these are their two outside corners. In JD Drew, they're getting way more snaps. So I'm guessing that's what that means. So that's a good sign for us. This guy's only a 61.7, but their slot's very good, and we do like to take advantage of that slot. So very good cornerback group. And then let's take a look at their safeties. They have Ike Larson, who is a guy that I wanted at least over the offseason to transfer to Utah. So Ike Larson is a 67.4, so above average. Jordan Vincent, a 68.9, above average there, and they're getting the vast majority of the snaps. These look like they're both going to see some snaps, right? 88 snaps, 67. They're not as talented. But overall, I think when you look at what we're bringing to the table, receiver and tight end wise, and then the quarterback situation, compared to a very good DB group in Utah State, I'm actually going to give the edge somewhat significantly to Utah State. I don't think we're going to want to be throwing a ton, just being honest about that. When I look at this group, I think they've got the edge. They played USC, which is a great receiving group, right? That's what they're known for, throwing the ball. And if they're getting these grades against that type of receiving and passing game, it's not boding well for what we've seen from our passing game and what we've seen from Isaac Wilson so far. Again, I expect them to step it up, but it's not a great matchup for us there. All right, guys. And the final matchup is our rushing attack versus their rushing defense. Now, one thing to look at here is that Mekhi Bernard, surprisingly, is getting all the snaps. And I'm glad to see it, considering how good he's looked, not only in the grade, but the eye test and the numbers. I like that we're seeing a good, healthy mix in of Mike Mitchell, Dejon Stanley. I find it weird that Jalen Glover has the exact same number of snaps as Charlie Vincent. I know it's been a bit of a talking point this week. I wonder what's going on there. Jalen Glover always looks good when he's on the field. Not saying he looks amazing, but he looks solid. I hope everything's okay behind the scenes. Who knows, right? Who knows what's going on there? I like Jalen Glover and I want him to do well. So I don't like seeing what's going on here, but we're only 2 games in. Problem is, there were some ominous posts on Twitter from Jalen Glover, so we'll see. We'll see what happens, right, guys? Who knows? Wishing the best. Hopefully, everything's good there. So, at running back, Mekhi Bernard's the guy. I'm only showing the rest of these guys so you guys can get an idea. Dejon Stanley and Mike Mitchell are the obvious guys rotating in with a little bit of Charlie Vincent or Jalen Glover, at least at the moment. So, they're all grading out pretty well. Mike Mitchell's a little below average, but nothing terrible. And I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Anyways, let's look at Mekhi. Mekhi's killing it. I'm going to turn off the snap minimum, so we're just looking at Mekhi. Looks awesome. 73.1 grade. a guy that has the ability to take it to the house and make something out of nothing. I've been super impressed with him, and I'm excited to see him. Like I mentioned, eye test and the PFF grade are both adding up to him looking really good this year. Now we'll move over to Utah State's linebackers. These two don't look good, right? This guy looks terrible. He's what my old coach used to call a huckleberry. I don't know if you guys, I say it a lot on this channel. I don't know if you guys know what the term means. Maybe that's just like what my coach used to say. But a huckleberry is like someone that sucks. A huckleberry, a 38 grade, that's really, really bad. Now, it's early in the year, and sometimes these aren't reflective of the actual talent of the player. But a huckleberry means like, hey, when we're out there, we want to spotlight this guy and send the play towards him because he's not going to be able to get it done. So you don't want to be your team's huckleberry, which, that's not a good look. So, and then this guy's a little below average, but not terrible. But out the gate, it looks like we have a huge advantage there. But then you turn on the snap minimum or you turn off the snap minimum. And these two guys up here, Miller and Pearson, are grading out really well. And they have 45 and 48 snaps. So those are like, it's the other two are the clear top guys, but those two rotate in a lot, right? They're going to rotate in a lot. So 42 and 1 down here are at the bottom of the screen are going to be the guys that are like the main two, but then 26 and 39 are going to come in and get shots. So Jaden Pearson, huh? That name sound familiar at all? Uh, Jaden Pearson, I believe he played for Utah, if I'm correct. I don't know if he actually saw the field much. Jaden JP Pearson. So that's cool. It looks like he switched over to linebacker. But so that's our linebacker room. I think when you look at the fact that our offensive line has a big edge over their defensive line, and I think we do have a slight edge here when you consider these two aren't getting the majority of the snaps. It's the lower quality guys getting the majority. We have a slight edge here in our running back, if not a good edge here in our running back room against their linebackers. So really good sign. And I think our run game I'd give a big edge to Utah here. All right, guys. And so we went through every position group for both teams really, and a ton of data was had, right? And then kind of we also looked at some yards performances on the team ranking site. Again, I think, when we're looking at the yardage and the rankings, they played USC at the Coliseum. We played Baylor at home. So that needs to be taken into account, right? And we're going up to Logan and they're gonna want this win. So that's a factor as well. But I think what we saw in the PFF grades, and again, these PFF grades were real early in the year. I think it's around game 4, game 5, like after game 4, after game 5, when you really get an idea of where these guys are because you don't know the full story about who you've played yet. Like, we don't know if Baylor's terrible or if they're average, right? We don't know what that's going to look like. If we did that against an average Baylor team, it's a really good sign. If they suck, it really doesn't matter. So let's talk about it. We have a big advantage in the running game, and that should show on the field. We should go out there and dominate these guys running the ball, right? I really believe that, and I think that's what we're going to see. And then they have a pretty solid advantage in their pass defense against our pass offense if Cam's not there. And Isaac, this prediction is all going to be based around Isaac being the guy. I do think if they don't stack the box, we're going to run on them pretty hard. And that's going to happen. And I think even if they do stack the box, we'll have decent success running the ball, which will open things up for Isaac. And Ludwig's definitely going to have some creative play calls. He likes to move people around a lot, get the ball to guys short and let them make a play, which should work with Isaac's, youth and not wanting to put the game in his hands. Just let him get the ball out quickly, give it to someone and let them make a play. So this is kind of how I see this game going. Like I said, we're going to run the ball well. Maybe Isaac throws for 150 yards, right? And then makes a play or two with his feet. He's a very athletic kid. So I see us pounding the rock, like I mentioned. I see our defense being pretty dominant against their offense, right? Our defensive line's better than their offensive line, but it is kind of close. Our linebackers should do a good job. Everyone's grading out well except Sione Fotu. And that I thought he looked well in the eye test from what I see. And then our DBs seem better than their receivers, and our DBs plus versus their receiver and quarterback situation with Bryson Barnes, I think we're going to have a big advantage there. So I see this game overall, I see it looking like this. I see it being close because Cam's out, but not crazy close. I actually, after looking at everything, I think this is still a dominant win. I think Utah, at the end of the day, we pull it out 24-13, right? And some of that 13 they're getting is fourth quarter where we're just trying to get rid of the clock. That's how I see it going. It could get weird early. It's at Logan. It's intense. Isaac's, this is going to be his first real start. It could get weird. If Cam's in, all bets are off. It's 45-10, right? It's going to be a blowout. But with Isaac, this is what we're looking at. So, guys, before we get out of here, please smash the like button. That'll help get the video out to more Utah fans. But more than that, I want to hear what you guys think. Seriously, like what are your predictions? Do you agree with how I broke down the game? Do you have any thoughts or things that I didn't touch on? I know I didn't pull up our linebackers grades, but uh, just to let you know, it's Karine Reed and Lander Barton are good to very good, high 60s. And then Sione Fotu is in the mid 50s. So that's kind of what that looks like. And their running back, actually, so one thing to talk about is their running game is pretty good. They have a good stable of running backs, so we didn't touch on that. But I do think we still have the advantage there. So that's kind of where we're at, 24-13. I'm out of here. I want to hear what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel. I'm out. Go Utes.